Oh, Reverend Fathers, ladies and gentlemen, I do have a slight problem in giving these talks because so many people seem to have read so many things that I've written. And there is a problem of just repeating things I've put in my books and pamphlets. But on the other hand, you always get someone who's come for the first time and has never read any. So I can't presume that they're already familiar with what I've written. That's when you're teaching, one of the first things you have to do before giving a lesson is decide upon the amount of knowledge presumed in the people to whom you're speaking. And I'm teaching 11-year-old children. One of the first things I have to do after the summer holiday each year is teach them long division, which they've all learned the year before, but I can always presume that none of them at all can do long division because they all forget it in the summer holidays. So, for the purposes of this talk tonight, I shall be presuming, more or less, that people do not know everything about the liturgy, so some of it will be fairly basic, but I don't think there'll be a great deal of harm in that. And I am approaching it from a different angle, something I haven't done before, which is the question of division, a divided liturgy in a divided church. Now, the word liturgy is one of the most frequently used and least understood terms in use among Catholics today. And this is particularly true in Catholic schools. Teachers, who are usually female, I feel bound to say, concoct what they claim to be liturgies without having the remotest idea what the liturgy is. And it is very sad to relate that for the most part, school chaplains acquiesce meekly. I suppose I can't blame them too severely, because having taught in a school with an all-female staff, apart from myself, for 21 years, I tend to acquiesce meekly now when the ladies all gang up on me. And as I said, sadly though, the chaplains come into the school and they're given what is called a liturgy, and then they perform this liturgy. And they perpetrate whatever absurdities they're ordered to perpetrate without so much as a whimper. I know of one very courageous priest who declined to participate in what was more reminiscent of a musical act than the Mass. And for his pains, the bishop removed him from the parish and sent him elsewhere because he'd stood up to a head mistress whose own knowledge of the liturgy, from what I could gather, was somewhat less than that of Benjamin Bunny. Now, the most profound analysis in easily readable form of the nature of the liturgy that I know of can be found in the encyclical Mediator Dei of Pope Pius XII, which I believe this Catholic Truth Society is still selling, although it wouldn't surprise me if it had gone down the memory hole. Pope Pius XII defines the liturgy as the whole public worship of the mystical body of Jesus Christ, head and members. Thus, acts of worship which do not form part of the official public worship of the Catholic Church, as set out in her liturgical books, are not liturgical. I'm not suggesting for one moment that non-liturgical worship is without value. The Liturgy Constitution of the Second Vatican Council reminds us, the spiritual life, however, is not limited solely to participation in the liturgy. The Christian is indeed called to pray with others, but he must also enter into his bedroom to pray to his Father in secret. Furthermore, according to the teaching of the Apostle, he must pray without ceasing. Popular devotions of the Christian people, provided they conform to the norms and laws of the Church, are to be highly recommended, especially when they are ordered by the Holy See. One of the most beautiful acts of worship in the school where I teach is the May procession, during which the children process to Our Lady's grotto, reciting the Rosary. The statue of Our Lady is crowned, and while Marian hymns are sung, each child lays a bouquet at her feet. But, while most certainly an act of worship, this is not a liturgical act. Our word liturgy is derived from a Greek root, meaning a public duty or service to the state undertaken by a citizen. In the Septuagint, the Greek version of the Old Testament, it is used for the public services in the temple and is thus invested with a religious sense as the function of priests in the ritual of Jewish worship. Our Lord is described as the liturgos of holy things in Hebrews chapter 8, verse 2. The liturgy is his holy work for his people. And this is very, very important. The liturgy is therefore primarily not something which we do, but something which our Lord does. It is an action of Christ, an actio Christi, but an action with which his mystical body, the Church, is able to unite itself. The liturgy constitution of the Second Vatican Council stressed the nature of the liturgy as a Christ-centered action in terms that could hardly be more clear or more traditional. And I'll quote from the Constitution. Christ is always present in his Church, especially in her liturgical celebrations. He is present in the sacrifice of the Mass, not only in the person of his minister, the same now offering through the ministry of priests who formerly offered himself on the cross, but especially in the Eucharistic species. By his power he is present in the sacraments, so that when anybody baptizes, it is really Christ himself who baptizes. The liturgy then is rightly seen as an exercise of the priestly office of Jesus Christ. In it, full public worship is performed by the mystical body of Jesus Christ, that is, by the head and his members. From this it follows that every liturgical celebration, because it is an action of Christ the priest and of his body, which is the Church, is the sacred action surpassing all others. No other action of the Church can equal its efficacy by the same title and to the same degree. In the earthly liturgy, we take part in a foretaste of that heavenly liturgy which is celebrated in the holy city of Jerusalem, toward which we journey as pilgrims, where Christ is sitting at the right hand of God, minister of the holies and the true tabernacle. The Council is stressing here the fundamental Catholic truth that the priesthood of our Lord Jesus Christ did not come to an end when he ascended into heaven. He perpetuates it in his mystical body, the Church, which, in its innermost reality, is an extension of the Incarnation throughout the nations and the centuries. Our Lord has perpetuated not only his priestly office, but also the sacrifice of our redemption. To be present at Mass